Hello EFD squad and welcome back to Continental Club, where the atmosphere is absolutely electric on set. We've got Patrick Van Straan still a bit damp from his walk in. We've got Joe who's got a steamroller of a headache.
Jesus.
But I'll balance it out with a bit of, good old East Midlands enthusiasm. And we can only talk about one thing, can't we?
We can.
Yeah. It's Ancelotti's sacking and the subsequent fallout. My timeline was littered with questions about Ancelotti. So let's start quickly, lads, with who you think is going to replace him. Let me read you some of the bookies' favourites.
Go on.
Before Patrick leads us off. We've got Willy Sagnol, who's obviously been appointed as interim boss, hasn't he? So we'll discount him. Now, to replace him long term, we've got Thomas Tuchel, second favourite, Julian Nagelsmann third, and then Luis Enrique, Manuel Pellegrini, Jurgen Klopp, Leonardo Jardim, Joachim Löw, Unai Emery, and Louis van Gaal. So out of that quite extensive list,
it's an extensive list.
Who do you see taking the helm for the long term?
Nagelsmann.
Yeah?
Nagelsmann, I think, is the guy they want. What do you reckon?
Thomas Tuchel.
Really?
Yeah, I think Thomas Tuchel.
Why is that? Why do you disagree then? Let's generate some discussion.
I only think Thomas Tuchel is more likely because it feels weird to appoint Willy Sagnol as interim manager for a whole year, for nearly a year, because who would have done a better job, Sagnol or Ancelotti for the next year?
Yeah, I agree with
It
that.
feels a bit strange if they're going to wait a year for Nagelsmann, whereas Tuchel we know is available right now, Bavarian-born boy. I think he would probably be well up for managing Bayern Munich as well, just to get one over the Borussia Dortmund board.
Pep Guardiola actually recommended that the Bayern board hire him when he departed.
And I'm not too sure that Nagelsmann's quite ready yet. I think Tuchel is ready for that next super job. I think there's maybe one more stepping stone club for Nagelsmann before he gets to Bayern Munich. He would like to go straight into Bayern Munich, and I think Bayern Munich think he's ready, but personally, I think he's not quite there yet.
Is there another stepping stone on the domestic scene in the Bundesliga?
Doesn't have to be the Bundesliga.
Finishing fourth?
Doesn't have to be the Bundesliga.
Do you think he's ready for the top job, Pato?
It's hard for me to say, but I think Bayern think he is, and that's what ultimately matters, right? Like we've talked about this, but we think Rafa Honigstein, the German journalist, said that his understanding was that Nagelsmann maybe had an agreement to take over next summer.
Right, okay.
And Ancelotti was going to steer the ship until then. I kind of agree with you that it doesn't make sense to have Sagnol as interim coach for a whole season, because yes, Ancelotti has won the Champions League 3 times.
Exactly.
Like, he's quite a good caretaker if you've got him as that. But then on the other hand, it seems like he was starting to have issues with the players, and maybe they just think they can get Nagelsmann out. Let's not forget, of course, that they can pay compensation, and actually, German teams generally are pretty rational about these things. If they get some money for Nagelsmann and he really wants to go, I don't think they'll stand in his way, given that he saved them from relegation and now they're a Champions League side. They're in a pretty good situation. The question is, of course, for them, who they'd get in to replace him. Maybe they think they could get Tuchel. Who knows?
Well, German teams being rational is an interesting point, because this doesn't feel very Bayern Munich, does it? This feels like a knee-jerk reaction, somewhat, the axing of Ancelotti. Obviously won the league last year, has a win percentage of around 72%. I think his record stands at 149, drawn 9, lost 9. And I think he's picking up around 2.3 points per game.
It's pretty impressive.
Which is only is only bested by his stint in Real Madrid, where he was averaging around 2.4.
Really?
So he's actually winning more games in Germany than he was in Paris, for example. I mean, Hoeneß came out this week, didn't he? He said that 5 key players had turned on him in the changing room. We saw Ribéry, when he was subbed recently, throwing his shirt to the floor. Robin saying the team wasn't good enough. He left out key personnel in that game against PSG, which seemed odd at the time. Who knows whether that was to do, that was for personal reasons, or if it was for, just a new tact in terms of taking on the Parisians. But he left out Hummels as well, didn't he?
Robin, Ribéry.
Boateng wasn't even in the squad.
Yeah.
Which is
was he injured?
Somewhat alarming. I'm not sure.
He usually is.
I'm not sure yet. Probably a safe bet.
It was interesting in a way that, though, like just before you move on, I think that's a really interesting point that Hoeneß said, well, these players turned on him as a justification, because Bayern Munich always talk a big game about players not being bigger than the club. You know, like they came out and slapped down Lewandowski when he complained about them not spending enough. They constantly try and do this thing where they say you're not bigger than the club. You know, Bayern Munich has to come before any player's individual interest. But then they say, oh, but we're going to get rid of this manager who is clearly a very good manager. We're going to get rid of him because a few players have thrown their toys out of the pram. It's just like if Hoeneß and Rummenigge want to portray themselves as tough men, then they should stop acting like pussies. That's my thing.
Do you think they're playing good cop?
What are you going to do?
Good cop, bad cop.
Going to go back to prison.
Because Rummenigge obviously scolding Lewandowski, as you say, for having an opinion on Bayern Munich not spending enough money this summer. And then Hoeneß came out with, I think players are entitled to their opinion. Rummenigge saying that no player is bigger than the club. Hoeneß saying, you know what, players speaking out when they care about the club isn't necessarily the worst thing. So maybe a little bit of, as I said, good cop, bad cop, going on behind the scenes.
Irony of good cop role being played by a guy who went to prison for tax evasion.
There you go. Well, FC Hollywood, laced with irony at current. Let's dive into a few more talking points that came as a result of that sacking. Dak Asian Slayer, assume he just likes, the seasoning. He has said, can Dortmund win the Bundesliga now that Ancelotti has been sacked? That seems like a logical place to start, gents. Obviously, Peter Bosz has made a fantastic start to the season, their best ever start to a domestic campaign, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, at least for some years, only conceding 1 in their first 6 games. Joseph, does he have the tools at his disposal to win the league? Because missing a lot of key personnel, still doing well.
Yeah, I do think they've got the tools, but the tools aren't as good as Bayern Munich's. Okay. I think Bayern Munich's experience will eventually come to the fore. I just don't think they've got the depth to win the Bundesliga. Although Peter Bosz has started really well, hasn't he? Top of the league. I think that come the end of the season, Bayern Munich's squad depth will show that they're a better team than Borussia Dortmund.
Yeah, I think it's quite hard to disagree with that. But on the other hand, there is the fact that they obviously lost that game against Spurs. They lost, of course, to Real Madrid in the Champions League. And so if they go out of the group stages, maybe they can sack off the Europa League and really go hard at the league. But knowing Peter Bosz and knowing Dortmund, you'd have thought that they'll do their best in the Europa League as well. So I kind of agree with Joe. I think they've got a lot of talent, but maybe they're a season or two away. Of course, if Nagelsmann comes next summer, then you think maybe they missed their window.
Do you think that's why the Hoffenheim boys joined this summer?
You what, sorry?
Do you think that's why the Hoffenheim boys joined this summer? Like, Rudy
and Söder.
Because they knew Nagelsmann was coming?
I wouldn't say so. It's not an odd trend for someone to show their worth in the Bundesliga and then move to Bayern, is it? They just hoover up all that domestic talent. But yeah, I think going back to that Real Madrid game, in which Dortmund lost 3-1, eventually succumbing to defeat, but they went toe-to-toe with them for a large part of that game, and they actually implemented quite a brave game plan, didn't they?
Yeah.
They were playing 3 at the back to start with Nuri Sahin actually filling in as an auxiliary centre-back, when Castro and Piszczek, I believe, were pushing really high up the field. So he's putting his stamp on this side already, Peter Bosz, but as you just intimated, he might not have the personnel to make it work against the bigger sides, because they are leaving holes in that defence, aren't they? They are vulnerable, which is ironic, to counter-attacks, because that's what they've been doing to other teams for a number of years now, haven't they?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Dortmund will make a good fist of it this season. Their first game against Bayern will be very, very interesting. Maybe we'll be a bit more well-informed there. But I actually really like Yarmolenko. I think it's a great signing.
Yeah, he's great.
All right, let's dive into the next question straight away, which relates again to this. And it's from Leo Schofield, and he asks, is Bayern's refusal to spend big like Europe's elite at fault for their stagnation? In other words, was Lever right? We touched upon it before, didn't we? He came out of the big poll and said, we aren't spending enough money like the other clubs in Europe, like the PSGs, like the Barcelonas, and as a result, we're not competing in European competition, which, I mean, they've been to the most semi-finals after Real Madrid. They spent a record amount on Tolisso, and they're paying lofty loan fees and wages for James Rodriguez. So in my opinion, talking what do you boys think? Who should Bayern have gone for this summer if you think Lever was right, or is their frugality justified?
Yeah, I mean, name squads in Europe that are better and deeper than Bayern Munich. Yeah. I think you get Real Madrid, and I think you maybe say PSG, maybe.
Yeah,
or pretty close.
And you'd actually say, like, injury is a big factor. It always has been at Bayern in the last 4 or 5 years because they've got players who are likely to be injured, haven't they? Like the likes of Robben, the likes of Ruby, those explosive wingers. But you could apply that to, as you say, any squad throughout Europe.
Yeah, and
Ronaldo gets injured.
Yeah, exactly.
Gets injured, and Neymar.
And I reject the premise of the question as well because it says like, is this at fault for their stagnation? And you just think, well, I don't think they are stagnant. Like they might not be in the greatest form at the moment, but they won the league a couple of months ago. They, I think, they'd have gone through over Real Madrid in the Champions League last season if they'd had correct decisions from the linesmen, or if Robert Lewandowski had been fit for the first leg of that tie. And then they might well have won the Champions League. We'd be in a completely different situation. I think we all agree they were unlucky to go out there. So it's very fine margins at the top level, and the squad is still unbelievable. Yeah. Yes, they're going to have to think about a way to replace Robben and Ribery in the long term. They've got Kingsley Coman. Yes, they're going to have to think about whether Kimmich is going to be a right back in the long term, these sorts of things. But their depth is absolutely staggering. It really is. And any manager in the world would want to take control of it. I really don't see what they have to complain about.
They've also been very unlucky at the start of this season, haven't they? Drawing to Wolfsburg.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't watch the loss to Hoffenheim. I've heard it was pretty convincing. But Joseph, do you think Lever has any leverage?
Not really. I kind of agree. I don't think he has a massive amount of leverage. I think we said before that he's been a bit of a bitch, didn't we? And I don't think my opinion's really changed.
What a shocker.
What I would say is that over the next few years, they might have to change their wage structure slightly just to compete with some of the other top teams that are gonna pay massive wages.
Mate, they're paying James Rodriguez $7 million a year.
Yeah, but that's still pretty small when you look at the fact that Mbappe's only 16.
Yeah, but they're a state-run club.
I know they're a state-run club, but equally,
I don't think they should be your point of comparison.
And I think paying James that though is what means they're going to have to pay other people more because a lot of people at the club aren't paid that much. Of course, we saw them kind of not go in for Alexis Sanchez that hard this summer because they weren't willing to match his wage demands, which were admittedly mental.
And also, is it not? I think Neuer's on £120,000 a week, which is just tiny money for what he should be on. It's not quite. It's like a Tottenham extra. Like, you know how Tottenham pay so much less than the rest of the league? Not that Bayern do, but compared to the rest of Europe, I think they do. Compared to, if you were to put Bayern Munich's wage versus Real Madrid's wage, it would be an astronomical gap, I'd imagine. I haven't actually checked, so I'm probably wrong, but let me know.
Let me know. But that's why their recruitment, the emphasis is on domestic talent like Sula and Rudy, because they can pay them significantly less and they're going to cost less, and they are genuine talents as well. Well, let's see, they might become crucial to this season's success if they achieve any. Let's dive straight into the third question then of my three-pronged Ancelotti special. And that is from Sifi Manana. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And he's asked, or she's asked, which club can Carlo Ancelotti now pick in the Premier League after he got sacked? Let's broaden this to the whole of Europe.
Yes, better.
Because I heard yesterday that Vincenzo Montella at AC Milan might only have one game to save his career, especially after that dramatic 3-2 victory, I think it was 3-2, against Rijeka in the Europa League. Obviously an icon, having won the Champions League at AC Milan. Vincenzo Montella not setting the world alight in his second season after spending a lot of money. I think they only just beat Udinese, they only just beat Cagliari.
Lost to Lazio, didn't they?
Lost heavily to Lazio 4-1.
Yeah.
So boys, 1, where can you see him? 2, will he replace Montella?
I think it'd be really harsh on Montella to shift him out for Ancelotti. As great as Ancelotti was there, Montella's working with a squad which has been hugely overhauled.
Yeah,
it's been completely changed, and everyone surely knew that the first couple of months of the season would be difficult. If the owners didn't realise that he was going to struggle to bed in a whole new team, then they're stupid. They shouldn't be running a football club. On the other hand, if you can get Carlo Ancelotti, I'm inclined to say you get Carlo Ancelotti. He's obviously a fantastic manager. He's great at keeping stars happy, but I'm not sure I think of him as a guy who really develops youth. I'm sure he's capable of doing it. And of course, Danny Carvajal, he brought him back to Real Madrid. He'd been at Bayer Leverkusen and really just dumped him straight in the first team when they won La Decima. But I don't know. I think Montella is perhaps better suited to the job currently that Milan need a manager to do.
Do you think that to an extent, with how kind of the game's evolved tactically, that now he doesn't carry the same weight that he did sort of 5-10 years ago. Carlo Ancelotti, obviously a very good man manager, uses that 4-3-3 extreme. Well, he used it extremely well in the past, didn't use it very well against PSG.
Sure.
But is he at the end of his career, perhaps?
Potentially. I know where I'd like to see him. I'd like to see him in the England job. I would love to see Carlo Ancelotti managing England.
Tell you what,
taking charge from the stars, keeping it quite simple. Obviously, English players aren't, well, they're getting there, but they're not quite the most tactically adept group of players necessarily. Under Guardiola and under Pochettino and Klopp and things, they are starting to improve. But I think you chuck Carlo Ancelotti into that team, give him a simple system, a really, really good man manager, get the best out of a unit of players. I'd love to see Carlo Ancelotti at England.
I'm not saying he's not a sort of master tactician, because his record is second to none, isn't it? But the game has changed. Well, in my opinion, the last 2 or 3 years, this emphasis on dominating space, on the high presses, and you don't really associate any of that with Ancelotti. I don't anyway, but then again, I've not studied his systems in depth.
But of course, Mourinho's not a high presser either. Mourinho isn't in that kind of Guardiola.
He has changed a little bit this season, though, hasn't he, Mourinho?
To an extent, but I look at it and I'm like, this is still pretty much the Mourinho I remember. He's modernised it, but it's still recognisably Mourinho football. He wants to muddy up the midfield. He wants a defence that sits deep and compresses space, and he wants to hit you on the counter attack with really big, fast guys, and he's great at it. Do we think that Ancelotti's a clever guy who can adapt? Yeah, I think we probably all do. On the other hand, will he ever be as good as he was 10 years ago? Probably not. Maybe not.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. Is he capable of change? Is he capable of incorporating new systems into his game? He's not perhaps as old as people think, is it?
He's 57, I think.
He's 58.
Mid to late 50s.
Good time to get the England job, Carlo. Come on.
So national football might be beckoning. And one thing is for sure, West Ham will try.
West Ham will have a sniff.
So.
And he'd be a horrible fit for them. He'd be a horrible fit. I love Ancelotti, but it's like people were talking about him going to Arsenal after Wenger goes because he brings stability. But the thing is, clubs in England now can't carry a manager like Ancelotti. That's not to say he's bad, but you need a guy who gives you added value, and Ancelotti really gets you the best out of what you have.
You kind of need reinvention, not stability, don't you?
Yeah.
Anyway, where do you guys think Ancelotti should go next? Let us know in said comments. So guys, that was this week's Continental Club. We hope you enjoyed it. Please tune in again next week and send in your questions with the topics you'd like to see us debate. Ancelotti special. Did you enjoy it, boys?
Loved it.
Yeah, big time.
Loved it. Could do with an ibuprofen.
I'd like to go home.
Yeah? And what should they do if they're still here at this point?
Viral footy news has just gone live on Football Daily. Me and Christopher Hamill talking nonsense about Sergio Aguero's latest injury. So go and watch that, I'd say.
Yeah, stay right here on Euro Football Daily. Check out, Football Mundial. Stat Wars. Some great top 10s. All the good content you could possibly want. And of course, 90 plus 1 facts. Our new channel, we've got 90 plus 1 facts about FIFA. That's the game, not the organisation. Obviously, Cristiano Ronaldo, Barcelona, Real Madrid, the Champions League, everything on there as well.
Until next time.
Bye.